In every city, beneath the glittering lights and endless streets, secrets lie in the shadows. Some are forgotten, some are buried. But there are those who live in the darkness, heroes unknown, carrying burdens the world will never see. This is the story of one such family. And the night, everything changed. Hidden National Heroes. Chapter 1. Vale of the Ravenborn. The golden shadows of innocence. The city of New York gleamed beneath 1,000 lights, but for the Maccury family, it was never just a city. It was an empire built from gold, diamonds, and secrets. Frank Maccury, just 12, and his younger sister Annie, 10, grew up in a mansion that overlooked the Hudson River, a world of private tutors, marble halls, and the kind of laughter that made every corner of their home feel alive. Their father, Richard Maccury, was known to the world as a powerful trader, a billionaire who dealt in rare jewels and ancient treasures. But the truth lay buried deeper, in vaults even his children were never allowed to see. To Frank, his father was a hero long before he knew what the word meant. He admired the man's calm presence, the way he always returned home with a faint scent of dust and metal, like someone who had walked through hidden worlds. Annie, on the other hand, was the dreamer. She'd sit by the grand piano every evening, waiting for her father to return, believing that the sound of the gates opening was the sound of happiness itself. Their childhood days were painted in gold. School was easy, teachers adored them, classmates envied them, and their mother, Evelyn Maccury, ensured that every morning began with laughter and every night ended with a story. But all that changed on a rainy November evening. The call came while the children were finishing their homework. Their mother froze. Her teacup slipped from her hand and shattered against the marble floor. Frank remembered the silence that followed, so heavy it drowned even the storm outside. Their father's car had exploded in the outskirts of the city. The police called it an accident. But even at 12, Frank knew lies when he heard them. That night, the mansion that once echoed with music fell into shadows. Frank didn't sleep. He wandered into his father's study, a room forbidden to them. The air smelled of leather and gun oil. He noticed a drawer slightly open, revealing a small metal badge with a strange emblem. An eagle clutching a hidden key. Beneath it, a photograph. His father shaking hands with men in dark suits. Before he could make sense of it, footsteps echoed behind him. His mother, pale and trembling, whispered, "Never speak of this again, Frank. For your safety. For Annie's." The trauma hit like thunder. Annie's mind couldn't bear it. The doctors called it shock-induced coma. Days turned into weeks, and she lay motionless, her small hand cold in Frank's. He promised her that he'd find out the truth, that one day he'd make their father proud again. Years later, when the world forgot the Maccury name, Frank would remember that night, the beginning of everything. Because heroes, he'd learn, aren't born in light. They're forged in the dark. The price of blood, the golden name of Maccury once shone over New York's skyline, whispered in boardrooms, printed in magazines, and envied by men of power. But that brilliance shattered the night Richard Maccury was killed. In a single week, the empire collapsed. Rumors spread like wildfire. Accident, business rivals, debt. But deep inside, Frank Maccury, 12 years old, knew it wasn't just business. It was something darker, something hidden. At St. Grace Hospital, his mother, Shella Maccury, lay silent, her body alive, but her spirit lost. The doctors called it a coma. Frank called it heartbreak. Each evening he'd sit beside her, holding her cold hand. "I'll take care of Annie, Mom," he whispered. "I'll find out what happened to Dad. I promise." His 9-year-old sister Annie, the light of his world, tried to stay strong. She smiled through tears, sketching pictures of their family as it once was. laughing at the breakfast table, there, father reading the newspaper, their mother at the piano. But even her innocent eyes began to sense the darkness growing around them. Greedy relatives devoured what was left of the Maccury fortune. They took the mansion, the business, the cars, even the jewelry Shella once wore. Uncle Damien's voice still echoed in Frank's head. Children don't need legacies. They need guardians. But Frank had learned that guardians was just another word for thieves in suits. That night, as rain lashed against the windows, Damien's men threw them out of their own home. Frank stood in the storm, one arm around Annie, clutching a single suitcase. Lightning flashed against the towering gates as they closed behind them forever. Annie's small voice trembled. "Where will we go, Frank?" He swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Anywhere but here." They ended up in a small Brooklyn apartment. Broken walls, buzzing lights, the smell of damn, air and city smoke. Frank began working before dawn, earning coins just to keep Annie in school and their mother's machines running at the hospital. But one thing grew stronger each day. The question: who killed their father? And why did no one want them to ask? Late one night, while rummaging through his father's old coat, Frank found it. A sealed envelope hidden beneath the lining. The wax seal was stamped with a symbol of an eagle clutching a key. Beneath it, faint words written in Richard's own handwriting. "For my children, when the truth becomes too heavy to hide." Inside, a folded page carried coordinates, a date, and a message that chilled Frank to his bones. "If you are reading this, I am already gone. I was not just a trader. I was protecting something greater, a secret buried beneath this nation's heart. Trust no one. Even blood can betray. Protect Annie. She is the key." Frank's breath caught. Annie. The key. What did that mean? Before he could think, the floorboards creaked. A shadow moved outside their window. Tall, still, watching. A man in a dark coat. Frank froze, his instinct screaming danger. When he rushed to the window, the street was empty. Only the echo of footsteps vanished into the night. He clutched the envelope to his chest, heart pounding. That night, the boy who lost everything became something else. A seeker of truth. "I'll find out who you really were, Dad," he whispered, his voice trembling with both fear and fire. "And I'll finish what you started." Outside, lightning split the sky. Somewhere far away, in a government vault hidden beneath the city, a name flickered on an encrypted screen. Agent R. Maccury. Classified. National hero. Deceased. But the world had buried the truth. And now Frank was about to dig it back up. The path of shadows. The night Frank made his decision, the city felt different. The usual hum of traffic had turned to a low growl. The flicker of streetlights looked more like warnings than comfort. 12-year-old Frank Maccury sat beside the hospital bed where his mother lay motionless, staring at the envelope he had found in his father's coat, the one marked with the eagle and key. He traced his fingers over the coordinates written inside. His mind repeated his father's words again and again. "Protect Annie. She is the key." Frank didn't yet understand what that meant, but one thing was certain. His father wasn't just a trader. He was something far more dangerous. And if the world had buried the truth, then Frank would be the one to dig it out, no matter the cost. The next morning he began to prepare. He stopped being just a boy. He started becoming something else. Careful, watchful, silent. He borrowed old books from the library about maps, military codes, and communication signals. He studied late at night when Annie slept, memorizing the coordinates again and again until he could see them even with his eyes closed. But strange things started happening. One evening, while returning from work, Frank noticed a man watching him from across the street, tall, wearing a black trench coat, the same figure he had seen that night by the window. The man never moved, never spoke, but his eyes followed every step Frank took. The next day, Frank found the front door of their apartment slightly open. Nothing was stolen, but the envelope was gone. Panic raced through him. He tore through drawers and boxes, searching every corner until Annie ran in, frightened. "Frank, what happened?" He froze. "Nothing," he lied, forcing a smile. "Go to bed." But inside something ignited. Not fear, but resolve. Whoever was watching them knew more about his father than the Sir. I did. And if they wanted that envelope, it meant one thing. The truth was dangerous. That night, Frank slipped out quietly, taking only a flashlight, his father's watch, and a torn piece of the note he had copied earlier. The coordinates pointed toward an old warehouse, district near the Hudson River, an abandoned dockyard, long forgotten by the city. The wind howled through the empty streets as he reached the gates. Rusted chains hung loosely, as if someone had broken in long ago. His flashlight flickered once, then steadied. Every instinct screamed for him to turn back, but he didn't. Inside, the air smelled of oil and metal. Footprints, fresh ones, lined the dust. He followed them. At the end of the hall, half buried under a sheet of metal, he found it. A black briefcase with the same eagle and key symbol. Before he could open it, a whisper echoed from the shadows. "You shouldn't have come here, Frank." He spun around. No one. The sound of boots followed. Someone else was there, watching, waiting. His pulse raced. He grabbed the briefcase and ran, the echo of footsteps chasing him through the dark. He didn't stop until the warehouse lights faded behind him. When he finally reached home, trembling, he clutched the case tightly against his chest. Inside, he knew, was the truth. And the truth always demands a price. The making of strength. The briefcase lay hidden beneath the floorboard of their small Brooklyn apartment, silent, heavy, and full of unanswered questions. Frank hadn't opened it yet. Something inside told him the truth wasn't ready to be faced. Or maybe he wasn't ready to face it. The man who had followed him at the warehouse had vanished, but the feeling of being watched never left. Every shadow on the street seemed to whisper his name. Every night, he checked the locks twice before sitting beside his sister's bed. 12-year-old Frank Maccury had already seen more pain than most grown men, but pain, he realized, wasn't his enemy anymore. It was his teacher. One night, as thunder rolled across the sky, he stood before the window, looking at the city lights far away. "I know this won't be easy," he whispered to himself. "The truth never is. But I'm not afraid anymore." From that night onward, Frank changed. He divided his days into two worlds. In the daylight he worked, running errands, cleaning shops, carrying boxes in the market, anything that could earn a few dollars for food and for his mother's hospital bills. The world saw a small, quiet boy, struggling to survive. But in the darkness, another version of him was born. When Annie went to sleep, Frank began to train. He started with what little he knew, push-ups, sit-ups, running up and down the stairwell of their building until his legs ached. Over time, pain turned into endurance. His body grew stronger, his breath steadier, his will sharper. He read everything he could: military journals, survival guides, combat techniques. Most of the time, he had to sneak into the library's restricted section just to get a few more pages of knowledge. He watched the world differently now, noticing exits, patterns, and people who didn't belong. Weeks turned into months. The soft-faced boy who once feared, the dark now found comfort in it. He learned how to move quietly, how to listen, how to disappear. He even practiced defending himself with broken sticks or metal pipes behind the old warehouse when no one was watching. Annie began to notice the change. "Frank, why do you wake up before sunrise?" she asked one morning. He smiled faintly, brushing her hair back. "Because one day, I'll need to be ready. For Dad. For Mum. For us." But Frank knew the truth was closer than he admitted. He could feel it, like a storm slowly building on the horizon. The briefcase beneath the floor wasn't just a clue. It was a door. And when he opened it, nothing would ever be the same again. He often looked at his reflection in the cracked mirror and whispered, "A sharp mind isn't enough to fight monsters. You must become one, but with a reason." Each bruise, each sleepless night, was a step closer to becoming something the world couldn't break. Because Frank Maccury had finally understood what it meant to carry his father's blood, the blood of a hidden hero, the monsters in the light. The world thought Richard Maccury died a simple man, a billionaire trader, victim of a tragic accident. The news flashed across headlines for 2 days before the city moved on. But in the corners of the world where light rarely reached, his death was more than news. It was a signal. In the underground networks, hidden behind screens and encrypted codes, a message was quietly passed from one untraceable server to another. "The Falcon is gone. Proceed with Phase 2. And just like that, the monsters began to crawl out of their holes. Unknown to Frank, his father had been the last barrier between his nation and a silent storm. As an undercover agent of a secret special force, Richard had dismantled criminal syndicates, exposed corrupt officials, and buried plans that could tear the country apart. His work had enemies, powerful ones, and now that he was gone, they were coming back to finish what he had stopped. Back in Brooklyn, Frank had no idea that his father's death had set the entire underworld in motion. All he knew was that something dark was approaching, a danger he could feel, not see. That night, the air felt different. The city lights flickered strangely. From his window, Frank saw a convoy of black vehicles passing silently through the empty streets. No sirens, no markings, just the faint reflection of weapons inside. He hid the briefcase under the floorboard again, his heart pounding. Annie was asleep, clutching her toy rabbit, unaware that danger was already circling their lives. But curiosity had a way of burning through fear. When the street fell silent again, Frank pulled the briefcase out. His hands trembled as he unlocked the rusted latches. The hinges creaked open, and what he saw inside changed everything. A small metallic device blinked faintly, no larger than his palm, covered in engraved numbers and symbols. Beside it lay a set of documents sealed in a plastic folder. One page bore his father's handwriting, bold and deliberate. "In case of my death, the code must never fall into the wrong hands. Project Revenant must remain buried." Before he could read further, a low hum filled the air. The lights flickered, and the device inside the briefcase began to glow. A faint blue light pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Frank froze, staring at it. Then suddenly, a voice echoed through the room, metallic and distorted. "If you are my son, they will come for you next." Frank slammed the lid shut, gasping for breath. The briefcase was now vibrating faintly. Something inside it was alive, or waiting to be awakened. Outside, unseen figures in dark coats moved silently across the rooftops, scanning the neighborhood with infrared lenses. One of them spoke into a hidden mic. "Target confirmed. The boy has the case." The storm had begun. and the monsters that his father once hunted were no longer hiding. Frank didn't know it yet, but by opening that case, he had just inherited his father's unfinished war. The night of the fleeing shadows. Rain poured over New York like the sky was mourning something lost. The streets glistened under the pale glow of street lamps, and in the corner apartment of a half-forgotten block, Frank Maccury stood frozen, clutching the briefcase that had just changed his life forever. A faint knock echoed through the door. 3 taps. A pause. Then 2 more. It wasn't a neighbor. Frank's heart skipped. He turned toward Annie, her eyes barely open, confused, clutching her toy rabbit. "Frank, what's happening?" she whispered. He pressed a finger to his lips. "Quiet, Annie. Don't make a sound." Through the crack under the door, he saw the faint shadow of boots. 3 pairs, unmoving, patient, like wolves waiting for a sign. Then came the whisper of metal, a lock being picked. Frank's instincts screamed. He grabbed Annie's small hand and ran toward the fire escape at the back of the apartment. As they slipped out into the cold rain, the door behind them burst open. The sound of boots stormed in, furniture breaking, voices cold and sharp. "Find the boy! He has the case!" Annie's tears mixed with rain as Frank helped her down the iron ladder, his own hands trembling but firm. "Don't look back," he said, voice shaking. "No matter what happens, keep moving." They ran through the alleyways of Brooklyn, 2 shadows in a city that had forgotten their name. Behind them, searchlights scanned the wet concrete. A drone hummed above the rooftops, its red eye slicing through the night. By dawn, they found themselves near the old harbor, a graveyard of abandoned warehouses and rusting ships. Frank led Annie into one of them, breaking the lock with a piece of pipe. Inside, the air was thick with dust and silence. Annie shivered as he wrapped his jacket around her. "Frank, where will we go now?" He looked at her. His sister, his only family left, the one pure thing in a world that had turned dark. "I don't know," he admitted softly. "But I swear to you I won't let them touch you. Ever." Annie's small hand reached for his. "Dad used to say heroes never run." Frank smiled faintly through tears. "He also said heroes never let the innocent die. We're not running, Annie. We're surviving. For him." In the distance, sirens wailed, faint but getting closer. Frank opened the briefcase again, staring at the strange device pulsing faintly in the dark. It felt alive, almost aware of them. On one corner of the paper, his father's handwriting appeared again. "If you're reading this, you are now part of something far greater than you know. Find the raven. Trust no one." Frank closed the briefcase slowly. The message burned into his mind. As dawn broke over the city, 2 children huddled inside a forgotten warehouse, with nothing but a secret, a promise, and a mission too heavy for their years. For the first time, Frank realized this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about protecting the truth his father died for. And somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered to him through the storm, "The war has begun, son of the hidden hero, the hidden ally." The night had long surrendered to silence. The rain outside the broken windows had stopped, but the echo of fear still lingered in Frank's chest. Annie slept close to him, her tiny hand gripping his sleeve. The faint pulse of blue light from the briefcase flickered across the walls like a heartbeat that refused to die. Then, a sound. Footsteps. Slow, calculated, controlled. Frank's pulse spiked. He rose silently, gripping the rusted metal pipe he kept beside him. The footsteps stopped at the doorway. A man's voice, calm yet powerful, broke the quiet. "Easy, Frank. I'm not here to hurt you." A tall figure stepped from the shadows. Dressed in black, face hidden beneath a hood, he carried the presence of someone used to commanding danger, but also carrying it. His eyes, dark and sharp, studied Frank with quiet intensity. "Who are you?" Frank asked, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. The man's tone softened. "They once called me the Raven. Your father and I, we fought the same war." Frank froze. The pipe slipped slightly from his grip. "You knew my dad?" "I didn't just know him," the Raven said, stepping closer. "He saved me, more than once, and he made me promise that if anything ever happened to him, I would find you and your sister." The name Richard Maccury seemed to echo in the cold air between them, a ghost neither of them could see, but both could feel. Frank hesitated. "If you really knew him, then tell me the truth. Was my father what they say he was?" The Raven's eyes narrowed. "Your father was everything they feared he was. A protector, a weapon, a secret too dangerous to live long, and now they'll come for you, because of what he left behind." He glanced at the briefcase, the faint blue light reflecting in his eyes. "That isn't just a case, Frank. It's a key to something your father called Project Revenant. You'll understand it one day, but not yet." Annie stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Frank, who's that?" Frank knelt beside her. "Someone Dad trusted." The Raven extended a gloved hand. "Come with me, both of you. I can keep you safe, but safety will cost you everything you know." Without another word, they followed him into the dark, through hidden tunnels beneath the city, descending deeper into the world their father once walked. Hours later they arrived at a massive steel door carved into rock. The Raven placed his palm on a scanner. A faint green light blinked. The door opened with a deep metallic growl, revealing a vast, underground facility humming with dim light and distant echoes. "This is the Black Haven," the Raven said. "Your father trained here. And now, it's your turn." Days turned to weeks. The training began. Frank ran through endless tunnels, lifted until his arms gave out, fought shadows until he learned balance and focus. Annie trained beside monitors, decoding languages and encryptions under the Raven's watch. The Raven never smiled, but his voice carried a strange respect whenever Frank fell and stood again. "Good. Pain means you're still human. Discipline means you're becoming something more." And when the lights dimmed at the end of each day, Frank would look at his bruised hands and whisper quietly to himself, "Dad, I'll finish what you started." The Raven watched from the shadows, his expression unreadable. He knew the boy was destined for something greater, and that greatness always demanded sacrifice.